Welcome to the show, Shweta. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And congratulations on your show and your podcast. How does it feel?
Thank you. Correction, it's my
I
daughter's
know.
podcast. We're just, well, unpaid labor, I
Yeah.
think. So it feels great. It's a very new thing we've done. And it feels actually really good. I'm super happy for Navya. I'm happy that people have, enjoyed what they've been listening so far. And yeah, fingers crossed.
Well, I've really enjoyed whatever I've listened to.
Thank you.
So we all wait with bated breath every Saturday morning for the episodes to drop. So congratulations
Thank
again.
you.
I'm going to go back a little in time and get to know you because I think that there's, and when I was sort of researching for this, I was like, I want to know more than what's out there.
Oh, okay.
So tell us, what were your growing years like? I mean,
So I've sort of mentioned it in one of our podcasts that I love my childhood because it was a very protected we were on almost like an island in ourselves. It was me, my brother. We had our four cousins, and it was just this life where we were just this big joint family and very unaware of forces outside of our four walls. So honestly, I mean, my father was doing his most prolific work at that time, and we had no idea because my parents never allowed work into the home. They still don't. And we didn't have any access to film magazines or any of that. It was a very innocent sort of life. We were a little naive and, a little gullible and very busy playing, going to school, homework, tests. My mom was a regular mom coming in for our report days and, all of that.
that's really interesting. And I mean, obviously today is a completely different situation, growing up with access to everything.
Yes.
It's not,
Yes.
but I love that you said that, your parents didn't bring work home because that's something I struggle with a lot. And because we work together and, it's very easy to do that. And I think it's such an important life skill to consciously kind of leave work at work.
Right.
And when you're with your children, focus on your children. And that's something I'm really trying to get better at. But that's interesting.
I think it's also my mum stopped working while we were growing up, and she focused completely on my brother, me, my cousins, running her home, that became a different phase of her life. And today, when she's working, even now, whether it's, her work as a parliamentarian or her movie work, she doesn't bring it home. It's just become the way things are at home. So I think it's nice because everyone gets a bit of a break and a bit of a time to sort of come back down to earth from whatever they're doing, relax, and just, it's a very, I mean, we're just a regular family sitting around a table or around the television set discussing things that are not work related.
I think that's amazing. And that's the side that I guess people don't know and assume that it's always work, when it comes to you all. So it's lovely to hear that. Tell me a little bit about you and, I guess I've always had the impression that you're sort of, you keep to yourself a lot and, not out there doing all the sort of interviews and, all of that a lot of people in, Bollywood families would. And I think that's, was that hard for you? Is that what came to you naturally to kind of...
So I've always been very shy, and I am someone who likes to keep to myself, and I have my friends who I sort of, I'm myself with, and it's not very out there. I'm not very good at pushing myself, which is, I don't think is something that has helped, because I think when you're working today, whether it's, launching my clothing brand or whatever you're doing, you need to be able to push yourself. And I see Navya and I see how well she does it. She does it on her terms. And, she's so good with her Instagram and her social media. And it's incredible. I just don't know how to do it. And I feel it has been detrimental to my whatever my work is, whether it was my book or my clothing brand. I could have been more out there, and I just am not physically able to do it. I just can't do it. It's so mortifying for me. That I think it has been a disadvantage, but actually I go to sleep and I'm very peaceful with myself at night. So
no, I think it's important to you do you, but I have to say that from a business perspective, and as a, I hate saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway, a woman entrepreneur. People, you don't realize this sometimes, but people really look up to you, and you don't. Honestly, I've sort of had people come up to me and I'm like, why are they so interested in the things that I'm doing or saying? And but you don't realize that you go about your day-to-day work.
Absolutely.
And you don't actually realize the impact that you're having. And I think if what I've sort of learned over the last few years is that when we're in a position where we are sort of either learning or meeting people or just have access to things, it is it's almost a duty to put that out there and to share it in some way. And I was exactly like you're saying, I was like, I'm not doing video. I still don't do video, by the way. Even though my team's always like, you have to start doing video, nothing else works. And I'm like, well, too bad. But it does take a lot, I agree, to bear yourself in a way.
Yeah.
But I think the more I started doing it, I realized that actually nobody cares the way I think that they care, or is sort of judging or paying so much attention to a point where it affects my decisions to put things out. But actually, it's appreciated more than it's judged. And I think a lot of it was in my head before I started putting things out, and I started getting responses from people that were very encouraging and appreciative of me putting myself out there more.
Yeah, I think it's important because, again, a woman entrepreneur is also something of a bit of an anomaly. And, you have a child and you're working and you're not just doing one thing, you're doing several things. And I think it's so inspirational for women who may be even thinking that, could I, should I? It's nice to see that other women are doing it, and not just women who come from families where there's someone who's already out there. Like in my situation, I have, people say, oh yeah, of course, her parents are famous, she has a platform, etc.
Yeah, but you kind of are beyond that. Yeah.
Excuse me, women who don't come from that but make their own way. It's so inspirational to see that, and you should carry on.
Yeah, thank you. But and I would say that I think and hopefully we'll know about this by the end of the episode, but there's more to you than your name and your parents, obviously. And I think that's what is people kind of want to know, and I think that's the same that I would say in work as well. Putting the other reason I say it's important to put ourselves out there is because there's this sort of image that a lot of people have of us based on what we do in the public domain, and they kind of aspire to that. They don't really get a glimpse of the behind the scenes, right? They always see what's at the
Absolutely.
front, and real life is also happening behind the scenes.
Absolutely, it's a lot of hard work. I mean, you make it look very easy and seamless, but I'm sure just to get here to do this podcast, you've had to juggle your kids, your work, 100 things. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to come across a lot more.
Yeah. So hopefully this is the start for you as well.
I don't.
But I mean, speaking of that family name, how sort of difficult or easy, has it been for you? And it's a name that's obviously so well known, so highly respected. Not just in India, but around the world. How has that been for you?
So again, I've mentioned this in one of the podcasts that as a kid, I may not have been very aware of, what my father was doing. But once we got older and, your parents do sit down and they have conversations with you, it was a conversation in our home. And it's something that my parents spoke to us very, I thought it was very sensitively done. My father said that, you're going to have the pros and the cons, and you have to see if you think the pros are more than the cons, and actually they are. I've had a wonderful life, a charmed life. My parents have given me everything they could give. They started, literally self-made people, and they wanted to give their children the best. So I actually feel that, because I'm not in the business, for me, I've been able to retain a lot of my privacy, which I can see is the only aspect of this life that someone may have an issue with. And for me, I have no complaints. It's always overwhelming when someone comes and says, we love your father, or we love your mother or brother. And it always makes me feel good. I'm always aware. There isn't even a minute that I'm not aware of what they mean to so many people, and not to disrespect that, because these are the people who have put my family where they are today. They've seen their films, they supported their work. And so even though I'm very shy, if I'm out somewhere and someone says, can I have a picture? I will never say no, because I know it's not just me. It's whom I'm representing at that time. So always to give respect to people who take their time and hard-earned money and go to a movie hall and watch your parents work. I think that's always been told to us, and I think it's something I've always retained. Does that mean if I'm going out, I can never really let my hair down? Because no, I can't, but it's okay.
Yeah.
It's, I can go home and let my hair down. So what has happened is, because the people will always look at you, will have judgments, will have their opinions. I think as a family, we're very insular. And I think we would prefer to be home on any given weekend, just spending time with each other or playing a game of charades or, what have you, than maybe going out. So yes, we have become a little insular, but that's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
it's nice to spend time with your
navigating
family.
life
Yes.
a little differently,
Yes.
which is absolutely fair. And I mean, for someone, and of course, it's not even remotely comparable, but I've been out with my daughter. So I have a 9-year-old daughter. And
I know I Instagram stalked
oh
you.
God. Well, speaking of Instagram, I mean, there are times I've been out with her and someone's come up and just said, oh, I love your restaurant or something. And she's now at that point where she's obviously seeing this, hearing this. And then, like people send things at home and things. And I'm a little confused about how to, I guess, navigate this with her, where I don't want her to start making in her own mind things up about what we do. And I mean, she's aware that we have restaurants, and obviously has seen us in newspapers or magazines and things. And I'd love to kind of know what you would sort of advise someone who is where she's quite impressionable, and so is it better to just kind of downplay it in a way where she doesn't start thinking her parents are celebrities, or whatever, which again, that's not a word that I ever kind of encourage at home, but I don't know what's going through her mind, and what's the best way to handle this.
Honestly, the way I see it, today everyone's a celebrity. Everyone is the star of their own show. They have their own Instagram channel, whatever their own Instagram handle. But the way I see it is, life will teach you everything you need to know. So we grew up at a time when things were really good. And then there was a time when things were really bad. My father joined politics. There was that whole backlash. Then, he turned a corner age-wise. And suddenly, as an actor, you have to change the kind of roles you're doing. You may not, someone younger comes and they're more popular. And it's a big adjustment. Not just because, you get used to a certain adulation, but also, you have a restaurant. So the restaurant will always work. Here, my father is the business. So if you're not getting movies, then then that's your income and your only source. You are your business. So
Mhm.
it's very difficult to sort of, also understand. You have to adapt, you have to change, and the best people do. And you see things, you see heights of popularity, you see throngs of people outside the gate. And then there are years when no one even bothers to, take you in a movie. And we've seen that. And you realize that the highs are not real and they're not permanent, and the lows aren't real and they're not permanent. So it has to be actually dealt with, I would say, very lightly.
Mm.
It's not something that our lives depend on, or, it's, yes, it's there. It's a part of what we do. It's a part of work, which is why I think they never brought work home. So we weren't that affected by it. But we saw it. We saw life. We saw people change. And then, he did KBC and that
Yeah,
got
I remember
popular. And
that.
then people started, sort of
Yeah.
coming back into our lives again. So we've seen all that. We've seen him go through a terrible phase with, finance, economics, and we've seen him bounce back from that. So life teaches you everything, actually. You sometimes don't even have to specifically address it. And I think most young kids today, they know more than what we did at their age. They're smarter about all this.
I hope so.
They are, really. We don't give them enough credit, but they are.
No, and I'm very acutely aware that a lot of my social equity is linked to a restaurant that is never going to be, it's not permanent. And
No, why?
no, as in
It's
that,
an
it's
institution.
something. It makes me feel very old, but no, yeah, but it's just something that is, it can be transitory, and that's, I always have this at the back of my mind when it comes to my daughter, but that's very helpful advice, so thank you. Let's talk about you being a writer, and an author. And was this something that you always wanted to do? How did that happen?
Again, I'm always averse to doing anything that puts me out there, and I've always loved reading. I've always written stories, but just for myself. Even today, I write a journal. It's something I write in every night before I go to bed. And it's just something I enjoy doing. It's, some people meditate. This is my way of meditating, just distill everything in. And I love imagining different worlds. For someone who came literally from a home where you weren't really allowed out a lot, you start making up your own little sort of fantasy worlds. And it was very vibrant. And then when I was urged to start writing, it was at a time when my kids had sort of gone away to boarding school and I was home, and suddenly I didn't know what to do with myself. And so then this is something I channel myself into, and I enjoyed it. But I don't know if I did it full justice because, again, I don't know how to, plug myself. And yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the important thing is you did it.
And I lack a lot. I lack discipline. I'm a dreamer left to myself. I'm very happy to just while away the hours dreaming in my own world. So yeah.
I think there's no sort of the right way of doing it, and I think it's really important to be comfortable with doing it at your pace and your
Yes.
style, and not feeling that you should do it this way or that way.
And
but being
also,
comfortable with
it's a lot of baggage when you come from a family of overachievers. It's a lot of baggage because you don't want to be mediocre then, because you've only ever seen them go for the kill. You never see them be mediocre. So suddenly you're like, oh gosh, what if, I write this and it isn't that great? And I don't know, will it be embarrassing? But I think you need to get over that and do it. And I'm glad I did it. And if I had to do it over again, I would definitely approach it in a better way. And probably be able to push it a lot more, do a lot more of this. Things that I'm doing for my kid now, I should have done for myself. But, that's what life is about. You learn as you go along.
Are you likely to do it again?
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I've never planned anything. And why not? Never say never.
Exactly. You also launched your own fashion line.
Yes.
And so you you have a business. What's that been like, and what were the challenges? What's entrepreneurship been like for you?
Entrepreneurship. So I started the line with Monisha Jair Singh, who's been doing this forever. So it was very easy. She made it very easy for me because I'm not very good with the financial side of things and all of that. So I'm more part of the creative aspect or ideas and the designing and stuff like that. So it was very good because we had separate departments, and it was, it was so nice to have somewhere to go into every day, spend that time sort of thinking, creating, putting down your thoughts, your ideas, your designs, putting things together, seeing something emerge out of all of this. It's been a wonderful experience. So I've
But
enjoyed it thoroughly.
are you kind of are you aware of the sort of business side of it and how
I mean,
it's sort
I
of
do. I mean, she does try to talk me through it, and I just nod my head, and I get it, but also I'm not entirely very conversant with it. So I say, look, I'll handle this, and we have our own divisions, and that's how it goes. So
have you sort of faced any challenges kind of going down
of course,
this route?
COVID has been a huge challenge. It's been a huge challenge for everybody who hires people. There are karigars, workshops. These are things that have to be taken into consideration. Also, going for someone like Monisha, who's always had a brick and mortar store, to heavily rely a lot more on online. And for someone like me who doesn't understand it at all, how things like Instagram, Facebook push purchasing is something we've had to learn. So it has been a challenge. And I mean, it's been a huge learning curve. It's not been easy. It's not been easy for a lot of people in retail. So
we've often heard this, that the line, "You'll understand this when you become a mom." Did that hold true for you when you became a mom?
Yes and no. Yes and no, because there's some wisdoms that are older than even time. And I mean, my children keep telling me, you're turning into your mother. I hope you know that. And I say, yes, I am, but no.
And they don't mean that as a compliment.
Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. They're like, this is something Nani would have said, you're turning into your mother. So I think we all eventually, if you're a mom, you eventually morph into your mother. And it may not be such a bad thing. You understand a lot of where she's coming from. And sometimes you wish that, okay, maybe I should have not given her such a tough time, or maybe I shouldn't have been so difficult. And a lot of the times I tell my children, I think in my head, this is what my payback, this is karma for what I did, when they're driving me nuts. And they do that very often. I say, oh gosh, this is karma. And my mother will just sit there and say, I told you, it's going to come
Karma's
back.
a bitch.
Yeah, and it did come back.
It's funny. I had my mum on this show as a guest.
Oh,
I don't know
nice.
what I was thinking to voluntarily do that. And we were recording it online at that time because it was still in the middle of lockdown. I don't think the studio had opened. And before we even started recording, she went nuts because she was like, I said, oh, you're supposed to wear headphones, and can you sort of press record? And she was just going nuts. So we didn't start on a good note. And I think that was probably one of my most disastrous episodes, because I just got like bashed up, which doesn't normally happen, obviously. But it's what of course, there's a lot of who I am today that I owe to my mother, of course my parents, but my mother, for just being this real, just being very, I guess, I don't want to say ambitious for us, but, just wanted the best for us, obviously, like
Absolutely.
any parent would. But but actually kind of doing it through the exposure and, the just giving us all this opportunity, right? And so I'm extremely grateful, but I'm also kind of acutely aware that she grew up or had us in a very different generation from today, and it's taken me a while to just accept that, and so not kind of take the bait when she will naturally say what she thinks on certain things that I'm doing. And so she's an artist and worked from home, because her studio was at home. And so she was always there when we came home from school or whatever. And, that thing of, you should be there maybe when, your comes home from school. And I obviously have a, full-time job, and that's not always possible. And it really bothered me for a while till I kind of just learn to make my peace with it, and so I think it's so important for me today in my relationship with my mom in terms of recognizing that focus on the good stuff and don't let
Yeah.
the
Yep.
things that grate you kind of grate you, I guess.
Yep.
And it's a different generation, but yeah, we all have our bad days, I
Yes,
guess.
yes. No, but I get what you're saying, because there's certain things that my mom will also, I mean, she'll say it because obviously they don't hold back. She'll say, I think you should have done this way, but I mean, they're my children, and all the mistakes are going to be mine, and all the good parts are going to be mine as well. So, I mean, I think she's wise enough to give me that space to process that advice the way I want or not. And she doesn't take it badly. But yeah, I mean, there's always advice.
Course.
Why are you doing this? Okay, this. Maybe you should do this. And it's up to me whether I take it or not.
Absolutely, and you learn, right?
Yeah,
That's the whole
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
But just going back to the point about you being shy and sort of you feel like you're not sort of putting yourself out there as much. I mean, you have, like, just even if it's in doing writing a book, or putting your the creativity out there in the form of clothing or whatever, you are doing that. And of course now you're seeing Navya do it through the podcast.
Yes.
And it's what does that feel like, seeing her? I mean, you talked about it earlier, that you're very proud of how she's managing it. But what's that sort of felt like, seeing her kind of come into her own now, and she's obviously also a businesswoman, and
It's wonderful. I'm absolutely thrilled. I don't know if I've ever been someone who's ever wanted, I've never had set these grand goals that I need to achieve by this age and that, but I know she has. And I really want her to achieve every single one of them. And I want her to enjoy the process. And I think she is. She makes time for a lot of things in her life. And I think it's important. I love the way she's going about it. And I'm happy to support her with, whatever she wants to do. Honestly, I have no complaints with how Navya has managed to sort of gather herself up from really, she was an average student. She'd work hard. She did, she'd hit high school, she did college, she graduated, and suddenly I don't know what happened. It was during the lockdown. She just suddenly blossomed into this person, and she became very much her own person. And I see also her personality changing. Navya has always been someone who would want to please everyone. She was a typical people pleaser and running herself ragged. But today I see that she will do what makes her happy. She puts herself a lot more before herself before others, a lot more. And I think that's a great thing, because someone who's juggling the amount of things she's doing, you need to have that. You need to be a little selfish. Otherwise, people are just going to steamroll you, and especially if you're a woman, because you're not just expected to work, you're also expected to have a very sorted private life. So if you're a working mother, you're expected to be a great businesswoman, but your child is also expected to be well adjusted. Now, there is going to be a little bit of a slip between the cup and the lip, because you can't always be everything to everyone. And that's okay, and I see that Navya's learning to understand that. And she may not be the tidiest and the most organized in that way, but I let it pass, because I just see the amount of work she's doing and how passionate she is about it. And I think here I am, and if I can't help her with these things, then what am I really doing? And I think that's where women need to come in and help each other, not just say, oh, but you're 25 and you're nowhere near getting married and having a kid. That is not something I've ever forced her or even told her. In fact, I always tell her, not before 30, not before you have enough money in your bank account. It's very important to me.
It's interesting that you talk about financial independence, because that's the one thing that, for some reason, my mother did make me. It was something that, I don't think she was saying it to me that it's important to be, but it just was something that I it got ingrained in me from a pretty young age. And so, I've always had jobs through college and, saved up and made investments. And it was just something that uh, that I felt was, it empowered me in a way, right? Like, even if it wasn't something that I meant I could like go off and do my own thing. But it's funny because it also has this flip side, and I'm sort of saying this because, after getting married, sometimes that financial independence almost makes you like a little too independent in a way. And it's again, something that my husband sort of, we talk about that a little bit, where about finding that balance between financial independence and yet sort of understanding compromise. And that's just something that, again, when I sort of, I mean, Diya's too young, but when you're talking about, about Navya, that's just, it's something that I've learned along the way, and I'm sort of aware of that now that, I have my own business and I'm married. So, I don't know if she's ever thought about it, but I guess she's not thinking marriage right now.
No,
So,
I mean, I hope she isn't.
yeah.
She's still too young. But, I know what you're saying, but I'd rather it be this
Yeah.
for my child than the other way around, where she may have to put up and accommodate a little too much because she doesn't have the financial
Absolutely.
independence. I would actually wish that for every woman the world over.
100%.
A lot of women are controlled because they don't have financial independence, or they're not very conversant with finance. They don't know where the money is going.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a good thing for women.
Yeah.
And it's also important to know that you can go out there and you can make your own money, and you can support.
Absolutely.
You can support, even if it is you want to buy something, even if it is something as small as shopping. It's always nice to know you've made that money yourself. And it gives you a kind of strength and power that, honestly, nothing else in this world can.
I agree. And I also think that, when you make your own money and then spend it, you don't have a problem spending it because you can make more.
Yes.
And whereas when you kind of don't, it's sort of, you're like, is it going to run out? And I think that that's just as a mindset, it's so important. So I don't know if I was a chartered accountant in my previous avatar.
Didn't come up in my stalking.
I don't post much about it, I have to admit. No, so before I got into the restaurant business with my husband, I worked as a tax consultant and a CA for 9 years. And it's funny when people ask me, what's the one thing you'll tell people? And I'm like, learn how to do your taxes. Because, if you know how to do your taxes, you know where the money's coming from, you know how you can reduce your taxes and make savings. And and it seems like a really boring and dull thing to do, but it's so important. And I'm just reiterating this because
I agree with you. I feel like, in schools, they'll have home economics and they'll teach you how to make bread, but they won't teach you how to do your taxes.
They won't teach you how to sell the bread.
They won't teach you that. And I think it's so important. I mean, I don't have much use for algebra and all of that, but I would have had use for more practical math, for things like this. And I just wish it would be a part of your curriculum, because a lot of people need to know. And again, we're talking about adjustments with money and, a husband-wife dynamic. And I feel that you always need a very confident and empowered man to handle a woman who makes her own money. But it's not the same the other way around, right? I mean, you expect a woman to just deal with it that she is not making the money and she's completely dependent. Even if she wants to book a ticket and go somewhere, she has to ask. And it is humiliating sometimes, because then the other person can always turn around and say no. And then where does that leave you? And men don't really have to deal with that.
Yeah.
I mean, today I see there are a lot more people who have, maybe their house husbands and they don't earn as much or don't earn at all, and the wife brings in the money, which is fine. But then they say, oh, you need to be a very confident man to handle it. But you never say you need to be a very confident woman to have to deal with it all the time. That shouldn't be so. I would not want that for Navya. And honestly, if it means that she never really marries, it's fine. I'd rather just have her with me. And, it's fine.
Yeah.
I rather she have that financial independence, and if it makes her a little difficult to live with and no one wants to marry her, well, their loss.
Yeah, absolutely. And and even sort of applying this to business, I tell everyone that even when you might be like in our business, you might be a chef, and so you're in the kitchen, you know how to do your thing there, but always sort of have a basic understanding of accounts, because you should never be so dependent on someone. And this is kind of an analogy with the husband-wife relationship, but you should never be so dependent on someone that you don't even know what questions to ask, and they're just telling you what's happening, and you're blindly following it. And again, I can't sort of reiterate this strongly enough, how important it is to at least know enough to
I agree.
Yeah.
And I know this because I'm that person. I'm not financially independent, never have been. And I really don't know much about all of this stuff. And it's not what I would want for my daughter. I mean, for me to now, and very often my son, Agastya, will say, Mama, you should check your bank account and you should know what's going on in your bank account. You don't know anything. And I say, yes, I will. But it's just easy for me to just let someone else handle it. I'm not very good with numbers. But I know that both my children are very well aware of both their accounts. And it's not just Agastya, it's even Navya. And when they start earning, they know what they want to put aside. And it is a conversation at home. A lot of parents don't have this conversation with their kids. But they'll say, this money I'm keeping aside for things I want to buy. This money is what maybe, sometimes dad gives me. So this I want to use for this. And they know where they want to park their money, where they want to use it, what they want to use it for. And they always say, eventually to buy our own house and move out from you. And I say, oh, okay, you do that. That's step one. And then you'll be back in a week because you won't know how to run it. And then they say, yeah, you're right.
Absolutely. In one of your recent articles, you mentioned how you've talked about not being financially independent, and you've actually been quite honest about this. And even today, I mean, I'm really kind of I really applaud this. I think that it's very rare to have people talk about this openly enough, and
it's a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
It's not something anyone should follow. It is something that people should be aware of and just know what's going on, even if you don't want to be an earning member of the family. Know what's going on with the finances of your home. Just know that where the money is going. A lot of times you hear these terrible stories where suddenly the whole business is bust and the wife had no idea because she had no idea of what was going on with the money.
And we've seen this actually happen, with very smart, sort of high-powered women in business, and we've seen this in the news. And when you just sit there, you're just like, how? You of all people, one would expect to know this. And again, can't sort of stress this enough. I guess,
you need to. It's actually, I think, for a woman, it's one of the most important educations to have, is to know how to manage your money. And women are good money managers. My mother says it all the time, because every housewife has a budget and her home runs within that budget. So why men don't come in and say, okay, this is what's going on at work, or this is where I'm struggling? You never know. You never know. You may have someone who's so astute who can sort of just tell you where to make the cuts and changes, because she's doing it every day in her home. Something is more expensive, so we won't buy that. This vegetable vendor has, better rates.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of common sense. But
I feel like I need to do a whole episode on sort of, financial independence and how to do it, because you may have the will, but, knowing where to go, who to go to, where to even start, right? And I think that
we need to make it easier for women. We need to make it easier for women to access accounts. A lot of women aren't even co-signatories in their husband's account. We need to make it easier for women to access, money when they need it. Otherwise, you'll need your husband's credit card. A lot of women live like that. And then they start saving 10, 20 rupees on the side. A lot of housewives in India do that. And then they had demonetization. And it was nest eggs of years. Women do that. Okay, we'll keep a little. we won't spend on this, we'll cut corners, and then we'll buy something nice for Diwali or something. And all that just went away purely because they are not, there are no joint accounts and husbands don't allow them to even know what's going on.
Yeah.
So
no, there's need for a systemic change at large. So,
yes, absolutely. A mindset change.
Yeah. What are your future plans? Anything exciting we can look forward to?
I mean, as I said, never say never. So there's nothing really planned as such. I just feel right now my kids are back and they are starting, just starting work and just getting started in life. And I feel like suddenly, and it's not something they've ever asked me, but I just feel my whole life has changed. I had a whole bunch of years where I was, almost footloose, fancy-free, doing what I wanted, and they were educating
when they were away.
Yes. And now they're back, and I just feel for the next few years, I need to be around. I need to be there when they come home and they say, okay, this is happening, and they just need someone to talk to. I don't think I can advise either on them, on either of their, career decisions or choices or paths. But just to have me there to just bounce things off of. And, sometimes when you say something out loud, you yourself understand what you want to do. So just to have that and just someone to just make sure they're eating on time and they're, doing what they need to do, because their heads are all over the place and they're all in this rush and they want to do things and make something out of their lives. And so I just feel I need to be there for a bit right now. And maybe I want to take that back seat and give this time to them. So I think that's where I'm at the moment.
Well, I think being a sounding board is a very, very big responsibility, and definitely, it's very important. And when you were talking just now, I was just thinking that you don't really always need to know about the specifics of their business, and a lot of it is intuitive. And I, not being from the restaurant background, have learned pretty much everything on the job or applying common sense, making mistakes along the way. But I think it's important to have support while you're doing that so you can get back up and keep going.
Yeah. So I also so motherhood also has a phase, you in the beginning where your daughter's at 9, 10, where you still need to be a lot more hands-on. And then I highly recommend this when they start turning 14, you have to let them be. You just have to back off because those fights are not worth it. They are just, it's a lot of hormones, it's a lot of new ideas.
Now. I just I can't imagine this.
Please don't be. You have to pick your battles, so some things are going to work and some things are not. And it is a phase. And I've been through it. I've been through it with both my kids. There's a lot of screaming and shouting and crying.
I can't even imagine that right now. It
happens. Yeah. It happens. And, suddenly you feel that there's no value for you and it's all my friends, and, this and that. And you feel you'll never emerge on the other side. But at that point, you have to step back and you have to get a little bit of, you already have a thriving life of your own apart from the family unit. So that's important to just say, okay, it's going to pass, and it will. And then they come back to you when they're in their early 20s and they need you then again. So it is a cycle, and you know when to, step back and when to go back in full throttle.
But was it hard for you to because what age did they go off to school?
13.
That must have been hard.
It was very hard. I was a wreck. I didn't know what to do with myself. I actually, for the first time in my life, had anxiety attacks. I would just sit there and say, oh gosh, what am I going to do with my life? I have no one to plan for, no one to send off here or there. And then you have to pick yourself up and you have to start doing things for yourself, which I loved. And then they came back. And now I'm like, I'm not used to having you here in my space all the time. So please just go away I just need my space, Just stop crowding me. My kids have this habit. They come home and then wherever I am, they want to come and sit there and then they want to talk and they think I have something great to tell them every day. I don't. I just want to read my book and I don't want to see your faces for a couple of hours. Is that possible? No, it's not possible. So it happens. They do come back. Don't be afraid. It's fine. Everyone's had to deal with it.
Well, so far so good, and we'll all survive. I'm sure I've done the same to my my mother. So, but anyway, we'll look forward to it. We're going to take a quick break before we enter the last segment of the show. So stay tuned.
Hello, everybody. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Shunya 1, Sheila Ditya is joined by Sonakshi Nathani, co-founder and CEO of e-commerce platform Bikai. Sonakshi shares how Bikai helps small businesses create their online shops on WhatsApp by building their e-commerce channel. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus Kajol and Abbas talk about McDonald's bringing back nostalgic Happy Meal toys and a Bengaluru tea shop that accepts payment in crypto. On All Things Policy, the Takshashila folk look at issues around moonlighting and analyze what the future of work might look like. On the season finale episode of Don Baika Gappa Aika, Avanti and Aparna discuss the life and issues of child actors who are exposed to the glitz and glamour of showbiz at a young age. And on A Niche Thing, Anish Bhasin talks to fellow IVM host Ashton Doctor. They both share their experiences of intermittent fasting for years, from fasting for 18 hours to 5 days. Guys, go to our website, ivmpodcast.com. You can check out the merch store, also links to all of our social media stuff, which is at IVM Podcast. Also, do check out our YouTube channels. We have a number of channels with many of your favorite shows available as full video podcasts. Finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Volvo XC40 Recharge, Bumble, Heads Up for Tails, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back, and I have Shweta Nanda with me. So I'm going to ask you sort of all the things that we haven't been talking about, and then it's a quick rapid fire.
Great.
So what's your go-to comfort food?
Rajma chawal.
Oh, okay. I've actually heard this as being a thing on the show, where you guys go straight home to Rajma Chawal.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's not a shocker. A great book you've read. I know you're a big reader, so...
Oh, gosh. There's so many. But my constant are all the Jane Austen novels. Persuasion is my favorite of all time. And then there's Wuthering Heights.
Oh,
I love
course.
these two books.
Wow,
In fact,
you're into the classics, clearly.
yes,
Yeah.
every time I travel and I see something with one of those deckled-edged, really beautiful covers, and I know I have them back home, but I can't resist. I'm like, no, I have to have this in this version as well.
So you're a big fan of like Downton Abbey and like all of these the shows.
Yes, I am. I'm a sucker for all of those kind of shows.
What would you say has been the best investment you've made in your journey so far?
I think it would be my investment in my children. The time I've given them, I don't think has ever been wasted. So, yeah, my kids.
Who have been your role models?
Okay, so, I mean, I don't think you're expecting this, but sports women.
Oh.
I'm really, I marvel at them because, first of all, because of our physicality, it's always like, oh, women are not as tough, they're not as strong. But when you see sports women, they're like forces of nature. And I'm not very sporty. So when I see women going out there and excelling on that level, I'm just fascinated by them and the discipline it takes. There's a lot of these women, especially the ones in our country, who don't have that kind of infrastructure. I mean, they're cooking, they're running, they're doing their exercise, they're training, and it's just amazing. They're like superheroes.
It's true.
So for me, those would be my biggest role models.
Very interesting. Last but definitely not the least, what's your definition of success?
Happiness and contentment, I think. You can have a lot of money in the bank and be miserable, and you can really be just scraping by and be very, very happy. So as long as you're happy and you're comfortable in your skin, I think you're a successful person.
Shweta, it's been so much fun having you on
And
the
likewise.
show. And thank you so much for making the time. And I don't think I've had so much fun talking about the whole mother-daughter relationship. The last time, like I said, was with my mother. So it wasn't half as much fun. But I really enjoyed this. And, thank you for being so candid. And
thank you.
Of course, sharing
Thank
your
you for
experiences.
it's been wonderful for me as well. And look forward to doing it again maybe sometime.
Great.